Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my gold bottle capped Eternatus in the Master League. Now, have I completed all of my gold bottle cap tasks yet? Definitely not, but I've gotten it from a 12-12-12 to a 12-15-14, so I'm making some very good progress. Eternatus is a very strong, very neutral presence in this new Master League meta, running Dragon Tail, Dynamax Cannon, and Flamethrower. One thing to note is that between forced overtaps and starting behind by a turn in several games, the game state during these battles was very, very poor. I was still able to go positive with the team, but there were a lot of games that were lost due to game errors. We pick up a pretty bad lead in the first match, Shadow Rhyperior into Palkia. I save switch into Lunala, and my opponent staying in and throwing energy is honestly perfect for me. I would rather take energy from Palkia on Lunala than anywhere else on the team. They end up going for the Aqua Tail bait. I can build up past the Moonblast and bait back with the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball is able to get the shield. My opponent will fire off energy, and they're going to need to go for a Spatial Rend. Aqua Tail will not take the knockout. They go for the Aqua Tail, and Lunala is able to hang on 1 HP and make it the Shadow Ball number 2. This Shadow Ball will not take the knockout, but Lunala was definitely able to get the better of that exchange. Now I can send in Eternatus, tank the blind Aqua Tail, and I'm going to be up a shield and up energy. My opponent's going to look to send in Zacian. I send in Shadow Rhyperior, but it's Kyogre in the back. My opponent had AVA Water. What was my poor Rhyperior supposed to do? I make it to the Rock Wrecker, but I will go for an undercharge and stop tapping. I don't want to get extra damage on Kyogre. What I'm going to need to win this game is a perfect undercharge and big farm on Eternatus. If they make the second Avalanche, the game is lost, but the undercharge was perfect, and now I have the energy advantage that I need to win. Back in comes Zacian, but suddenly the script has been flipped. We run Flamethrower for this exact matchup. They're going to shield up the first, but it looks like I'm on curve to be able to make 3 Flamethrowers. I'm shielding up as they go for the first Behemoth Blade, and then I can throw 1 Dragon Tail and go for the Flamethrower. I'm now at 100 energy, putting me only 1 Dragon Tail away from the game-winning move. Who will get there first? Zacian or Eternatus? We're able to outpace by 1 singular turn. Flamethrower KOs the Zacian, and we're able to take the Game 1 win. We pick up the dream lead in game number 2, Shadow Rhyperior into Reshiram. My opponent save switches into Xerneas. I'm going to bank a Drill Run and then send in Lunala. This particular play pattern sets up Lunala perfectly, as with the Mudslap damage, it puts them into Shadow Claw plus Shadow Ball range. Or at least it would, unless they get a Moonblast debuff. Now I think my opponent will actually be able to win the zeros here. Switch advantage is so important that I will actually put up a shield for swap if need be, but my opponent is actually the one to first use the shield. That surprised me, as I believe a debuff Shadow Ball would not have taken the knockout, but I guess they're really trying to keep around Xerneas. They try for a catch, bringing back in the Reshiram, but I can overfarm with Rhyperior and full send Rock Wrecker to guarantee the 1-hit KO. Rock Wrecker lands, Reshiram gets O-code, all that energy is lost, and in the back, they have Kyogre. Kyogre honestly will not get a big farm down here because Rhyperior just dies so quickly. I fire off Rock Wrecker, they're gonna no shield, and they lose almost their entire health bar. Now I can bring in Eternatus. Avalanche will be hitting for super effective damage, so I will put up the shield. My opponent at any moment will have the ability to pivot back into the Xerneas, but the Xerneas is very comfortably in Flamethrower range. I also have energy stored on Lunala, so I can tank the Moonblast, overfarm, and fire off the Flamethrower. If they shield, they're just getting ruthlessly combo played by Lunala. They end up no shielding, recognizing there's just no way for them to win this game. Back in comes Kyogre, we get the Dragon Tail down, and we're able to get the win. We move to game number 3, picking up a pretty neutral lead, Shadow Rhyperior into Xerneas, but we end up starting behind by a turn and we don't sneak through a Mudslap. Stuff like this was happening like once or twice every set. It was very, very frustrating. My opponent save switches into Lunala, and I immediately fire off the Drill Run. Drill Run will be shielded, and I'm going to pivot my Lunala into theirs. The fact that they shielded honestly works out pretty nicely for me, because now I don't have to go down 2 shields. Instead, I've been forced to give up my final shield, but at least they don't still have 2 shields to hide behind. I'm not quite going to be able to get a full farm down, so I will fire off the Shadow Ball to guarantee either the knockout or the final shield. My opponent gives up the final shield, and I think this is honestly ideal, because this way I'm going to get a monster farm down with Shadow Rhyperior. Even if my opponent has a water type in the back, Rhyperior energy is still going to do quite a lot of damage, and there it is, Kyogre hits the field. I can fire off Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker is going to hit for big damage, and then pivot instantly, so I'll be on curve to win cap with Eternatus. But my opponent's going to pivot out. They send in the Xerneas. I can fire off Flamethrower, and because I threw immediately, they end up getting denied their sneak. So Flamethrower will put them very, very low. The question is, are they going to be in a range where I can go for the double resisted Dynamax Cannon? Moonblast lands. That does hit for quite a lot of damage. I'm going to farm up, and I decide that I'm not going to risk it. Instead, I'm just going to fire off the Flamethrower, because I believe I'm 3 away from from the Dynamax Cannon, which would put me online to win charge stack priority. And there it is, the energy management from Eternatus. We make Dynamax Cannon on the CMP tie, KO Kyogre, and we're able to get the win. So even with the game completely robbing us on the lead, luckily, we are still able to get the victory, and we pick up an incredible lead in the next match, leading Shadow Rhyperior into Goldengo. This was another game where we started behind a turn, but luckily we're able to throw first, so that way, we're actually able to get all of our turns back. My opponent, the fact that they're staying in means they're definitely ABA to this Rhyperior. My opponent save switches into Zygarde, and I don't have a strong answer to Zygarde, so I just send in Eternatus. Eternatus has a pretty nice ability to kind of soft lose this matchup. Zygarde can hit for devastating damage with Earthquake, but Zygarde is not the fastest Pokemon around. So I can double up on Dynamax Cannon, and this will guarantee either a knockout or big damage and their final shield, because that's going to be a CMP tie Earthquake to the Dynamax Cannon. So this works out amazingly for me. I'm able to get the Zygarde deep into the red, and Zygarde has effectively been neutralized, even though it's kind of a weak spot for this team. I didn't want to send in Lunala in case they were on crunch. I bring in the Rhyperior. They have Eternatus of their own in the back. Alright, let's see this Drill Run damage. Drill Run lands, big damage onto the Eternatus. I bank energy on Rhyperior and send in Lunala. I believe I should be able to get a Shadow Claw down here. It's going to be very, very close. Eternatus, can they hang on? No, they cannot. We're just able to get that farm. That farm down is massive. Now as they bring in Goldengo, I can always throw one Shadow Claw and the Shadow Ball because that Hex worth of damage is going to be refunded. Goldengo falls, the damage is refunded, back in comes the Zygarde, and my opponent has just stopped tapping. We get the full farm down with Lunala, and we're able to get the win. We move to the next match, picking up a terrible lead, Shadow Rhyperior into Kyogre. I save switch Lunala, answered with an astonished Goldengo, and this game is just going from bad to worse. I will be able to force a shield advantage out of Goldengo, but look at this. Goldengo is going to ruthlessly farm me all the way down and exit with a ton of energy to hit for big neutral damage on a Shadow Rhyperior. If my opponent's able to make double Shadow Ball, the game is just instantly over, but the good news is, as they get the double up, my Mud Slap will take the knockout, denying that second move. Now I'm going to save the Drill Run and pivot into Eternatus. My opponent realizes I'm down a turn, they're able to take advantage, and they're going to fire off the Avalanche to prevent my sneak. That's a pretty nice heads-up play from them, and the final Pokemon is revealed as Zacian. Zacian will be able to outpace me here, but I still feel like with the Drill Run banked on Rhyperior, I'm still in a pretty good spot. I'm just going to keep farming. My opponent throws out alignment, maybe thinking it was 5-4 to Flamethrower, but it's not. It's 5-5. I put up the shield, I got an entire Dragon Tail for free, and now I can farm up to 100 energy. This way, I'm always guaranteed to outpace. Zacian is going to no-shield, setting up a 50-50 endgame. Will I go for the catch? Will I stay in? I decide to stay in. I stay in, throw the Dynamax Cannon. My opponent overfarms, predicting the catch. Now I can fire off the back-to-back Dynamax Cannons. The second one is going to be on the CMP tie. And with the Drill Run banked, that game is over, and my opponent will resign the match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Rhyperior into Xerneas. Last time I saw this lead, I started the game behind by a turn, so I'm very happy that this time we're actually on even footing. I bait with the Drill Run, and I'm going to go for the close combat catch, but my opponent shows great patience over farming, and will instead get to fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast isn't really too threatening here, but a Moonblast debuff definitely will be. So now I'm at -1 attack. I will put up the shield, because even at -1 attack, I should still be able to knock them out with the Shadow Ball. So now I can look to overfarm quite a bit, fire off the Shadow Ball right before Moonblast number 3, and I assume my opponent is just going to let the Xerneas go. I do have a decent amount of energy on the Rhyperior in case I need it for later. My opponent sends in Zekrom, I pivot Rhyperior, and it's going to be Palkia as the final Pokemon. Arguably, I should have committed to a Rock Wrecker here, as a Rock Wrecker would have done substantially more damage, but either way, I still feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. Palkia will be able to take the knockout with the Aqua Tail, but now is my time to send in the star of the show, Eternatus. Eternatus can go for a nasty one-shield farm down and exit up a ton of energy, and I'm just always going to be able to outpace the Zekrom. I'm also pretty close to a Moonblast as well on my Lunala, so at this point, there just kind of isn't really a lose con in this game. There's just way too many super effective charge attacks, and my opponent only has one shield. They will put up the shield, but there's the second Dynamax Cannon, and that's just going to end the game. Dynamax Cannon lands, Zekrom gets destroyed, and my opponent will concede the match. We move to the next match, Shadow Rhyperior versus Shadow Rhyperior. My bad IVs mean that I'm going to get crushed in this mirror. My opponent tries for a catch onto Zygarde, and as before, I'm going to send in Eternatus. I think Zygarde with the Earthquake buff is also one of the safest Pokemon that you could possibly run in the Master League. Realistically, I would argue its only true bad matchup would be Xerneas, and even then, Zygarde can put up quite a fight. So Zygarde is a Pokemon that as you climb the Master League, you're going to start seeing more and more and more of. I'm going to go for the CMP type Dynamax Cannon to their Earthquake. My opponent will give the shield back, and I've gotten them low enough with Eternatus that I feel like I can actually let this go and go for a nasty Mud Slap down with Shadow Rhyperior. Shadow Rhyperior up energy is very difficult to answer, even if you do have a water type. So now I have a massive amount of energy, and my opponent is going to send in Palkia. I can fire off Drill Run. This is going to hit for huge damage onto the Palkia. I decide to go for Drill Run number 2 here, but objectively, this is a misplay. I should always Rock Wrecker, as Rock Wrecker would actually take the knockout. So I fire off the Drill Run, they're able to survive. They bring in Rhyperior, but they can't quite get the farm down. Thanks to damage registration error, I make it to a Drill Run, pressure away a shield, and now it's all up to Lunala. Lunala's gonna have to take a lot of damage here, but the thing I do know is 2 Drill Runs do not KO. However, it's gonna be very close with the Mud Slaps. So I tank the first, I shield the second. Can I get the farm down? I really have to hope. Lunala's gonna try and get the farm down, but I can't get there. They get the damage registration error. Will this take the knockout? If it does, I lose the game, but Lunala had a plan for me. 1 HP and a dream. We leave with the Shadow Ball loaded. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Amazing lead in the next match, Shadow Rhyperior into Zekrom. The Zekrom is staying in, which is insane to me. If they're staying in, they must be ABA weak to Mud Slap. I fire off Drill Run, grab a shield from my opponent, and if they're staying, my guess is they're probably on Outrage. Outrage would do a lot of damage, so I will respect it. No, they're actually on Crunch. Crunch is going to do a decent amount of damage, and I decide that I will let this go. In hindsight, what I think I should have done is double shielded and farmed down, instead of what I do, which is try and go for a snipe with Eternatus. But I don't get the snipe, because trying to snipe with a 3-turn move on new system, they're almost always going to be able to react and pivot out. So it's Eternatus versus Xerneas, but this matchup is actually very okay for Eternatus. Even though my fast moves hit for double resisted damage, this is how much of a monster Eternatus is. Look at Eternatus in this matchup. Eternatus wins charge stack priority. This Flamethrower is going to leave them at basically 1 HP. So even though this is arguably a matchup that should be catastrophically bad for Eternatus, Eternatus just simply does not care. Now this is going to allow me to get a 1 Shadow Claw head start on Lunala, and my opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is Reshiram. Reshiram ends up CMP tying here, an incredibly risky play. I put up the shield, and they are on Crunch. If they end up no shielding, this is going to put them pretty low. If they end up shielding, then I can go for a snipe with the Drill Run. So I'm going to look to farm up here, switch into Rhyperior, get the combo play with the Drill Run, and that should end the game. Drill Run should take the knockout here, but it doesn't. They live on 1 HP. They bring back in the Zekrom. I'm able to get the Shadow Claw down. They don't have the Crunch loaded, whereas I do have the Shadow Ball. Honestly, I could have handled that endgame better, but luckily, all's well that ends well. We're able to get the win. Shadow Rhyperior into Kyogre once again. I save switch into Lunala, and my opponent's going to respond with Reshiram. I decide that I'm pretty okay with losing this matchup. My opponent actually gives me an early shield, and I'm more than happy just to let the Lunala go. Even if I get crunched here, that's fine. I'm going to go for a massive farm down with the Shadow Rhyperior. But the moment my opponent goes for a Fusion Flare, that tells me they're probably not on Crunch, and they're probably on Draco Meteor. They end up double shielding, and I'm expecting that they're going to go for a Draco Meteor into my Rhyperior. If that's the case, I'm getting 1 shot unless I put up the shield. But with a 2 shield advantage, I feel pretty okay shielding the Rhyperior. So I shield up, there is the Draco Meteor, and I can bank the Drill Run and send in Eternatus as they fire off the double debuff Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare really not going to do much of anything here. The energy is banked in case I need it for later, and my opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Zacian. Being up a little bit of energy just makes that Zacian matchup substantially better for Eternatus. Now I can fire off the Flamethrower, get really nice damage. My opponent doesn't throw on the greatest timing, but even if they did throw on perfect charge stack timing, they were always getting outpaced anyway. So now I can put up the shield, watch for the catch, and the moment I see that second Metal Claw start, I click Flamethrower. Flamethrower is going to be taking the knockout onto the Zacian. Back in comes Kyogre, and I'm going to overfarm here, play to the CMP tie. My opponent knows they lose it, so they're not going to throw energy just yet. My opponent has to try and read the combo play, so I just stay on the field. Their only chance in the game was blind throwing the Avalanche, hoping I tried to go for the combo play, but I did not. Instead, I just let the Eternatus go, bring back in the Shadow Rhyperior, unleash Drill Run to knock out Kyogre, and even despite these water leads, we're still finding ways to get wins. Hopping to the final match, we get one final water lead for the road as I lead Rhyperior into Palkia. I save switch into Lunala, my opponent ends up throwing on alignment as they fire off the Aqua Tail, and then sending in Lunala to go for a 1-shield farm down. This particular play pattern is devastating, because as the Lunala player, you get so close to the second Shadow Ball, but you just never get there. You always faint right as you make that Shadow Ball, and then your opponent exits with a ton of energy. This opponent, it appears, is not throwing any charge stacks on good timing. They throw 2 in the move there as they go for the Shadow Ball, and once again throw 2 in the move. I'm going to be double shielding because I absolutely have to. I'm just going to go for the full farm down here. I need to exit with as much energy as possible, and unfortunately they live on 1 HP to make a third Shadow Ball. The good news for me is I now have a Drill Run plus a Rock Wrecker, so as they bring back in the Palkia, I can fire off the Drill Run, hopefully get the shield, and then go for the Rock Wrecker. So I fire off Drill Run, getting the shield, go for the Rock Wrecker. The game forces an overtap. We lose the Rock Wrecker, and we're just gonna lose the game. I felt like this was a fitting final battle for this video, where Eternatus absolutely popped off, but the game issues were so frustrating tonight. Eternatus did end up going positive, despite starting behind a bunch of games, despite that horrendous game with the overtap, whereas if we make a Rock Wrecker there, they're never gonna make a Spatial Rend into Eternatus, and then Eternatus has the ability to potentially win the zeros into whatever they have in the back. But unfortunately, the game said no Rock Wrecker for you, HomeSliceHenry, and we did end up dropping that game. All in all, I definitely feel like there was a disturbance in the force in the Master League meta between last season and this season. Last season, Reshiram and Zekrom ran the show. Not only were they the best dragons, they were the best Pokemon you could use in the entire Master League. But with Shadow Rhyperior returning to meta status, that definitely does hurt the stock of both Reshiram and Zekrom. That also improves the stock of other dragons. Pokemon like Eternatus, Zygarde, and Palkia are all kind of rising to fill that void left by Reshiram and Zekrom. Reshiram and Zekrom are still very strong Pokemon, but they just aren't the best Pokemon in the Master League like they were last season. Specifically, what I like about Eternatus is it does really well into the other dragons because it is just faster at dragon damage than almost anything else in the meta. Sure, the other dragons like Palkia have cheap Aqua Tail, Reshiram and Zekrom have Fusion Bolt and Fusion Flare, and Zygarde can even throw on a cheap Crunch if it wants to, but when you're asking them to do dragon damage, hitting for super effective into other dragons, they're all getting outpaced by Eternatus. Add to that the fact that Eternatus also has Flamethrower for coverage, which allows you to hit for big super effective damage into Zacian and neutrally come close to two-shotting Xerneas. I think that Eternatus is probably in one of its best meta standings that it's ever been in. I don't think Eternatus is the best Pokemon in the Master League by any means. I don't think you can't play Master League if you don't have it, but if you do happen to have Eternatus, I think this is a very strong meta for it, and you will climb quite a lot of elo if you put Eternatus on your team. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much, and until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.